So, learning the laws of Shabbos, Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, section 302, halacha 21. Different rules apply to a garment that has no dirt or filth on it, even though it lost the luster of a freshly laundered garment because one wore it or used it. We do not say that moisturizing it with water is equivalent to washing it, and therefore it is permitted to place a small amount of water on it. One may not pour a large amount of water on it, lest he come to wring it out afterwards, in order to squeeze out the water, unless it is a garment that he does not mind if it is wet, and he would not wring it out even during the week, as explained in section 301:59. There are authorities who differ with the above and maintain that even when there is no filth on a garment, moistening it with water constitutes laundering it. This applies even if the garment has a bright shine like a freshly laundered garment. Therefore, it is forbidden to pour on the garment even the slightest amount of water or any other liquid that cleans, even when one does not intend to whiten it, because its whitening is an inevitable result. Weight should be given to their words, and one should be stringent because a scriptural prohibition is involved. So we saw two opinions: one is more lenient, one is more stringent. The Alter Rebbe writes, you should be stringent. So this is not considered a malacha she'eino tzricha legufa, because the person is satisfied that the garment is whitened, meaning the item is benefiting from it. Usually, melacha she'eino tzricha legufa is melacha that the item does not need it. So this is not the case, because the person is satisfied that the garment is whitened, even if he does not have that intent in mind. According to this view, it is forbidden to drink water that has worms in it by filtering it through a cloth on Shabbos. This restriction applies even though only a small portion of the cloth, the portion where one places his mouth, becomes saturated with water.
So wait a minute. So we got these filters on the word coming up. So we're going to say that's usher?
No, but the issue over here is the cloth itself becomes saturated with water, and then it whitens the cloth.
Okay, so we don't have that much.
You don't have cloth in your water.
I have one of Jacques' filters. What are they?
No, I'm saying, but even in your tap,
yeah,
the filter that is there is metal.
Right.
It's a metal.
Right.
Like almost like a sifter.
Right.
So there are, however, authorities who rule leniently, even according to this stricter opinion, stating that we do not say a moisturizing a cloth with water is equivalent to laundering it, when only a small amount of water is used, and one does not intend to whiten the cloth. For this reason, it is permitted to drink water while filtering it with a cloth, since only a small portion of the cloth is moistened, and the person does not intend to whiten the cloth at all. Those who follow this lenient approach should not be admonished, because moistening a cloth is permitted in all situations according to the first view. Nevertheless, every God-fearing person should be stringent with regard to his own conduct, so as not to enter a situation where a doubt concerning a scriptural prohibition exists. So there is no difference with regard to the above between white garments or colored ones, because the prohibition against laundering also applies with regard to colored garments, as explained above. And the prohibition applies with regard to all garments, whether they are of linen, wool, silk, or other fabrics. Nevertheless, all authorities agree that moistening a cloth that is not dirty is not considered as equivalent to laundering, unless it is performed in a manner that cleans the garment. If, however, one saturate a cloth in a manner that soils, for example, he dries himself with a sheet after bathing, or he dries his hand with a cloth after washing them, even though there is a large amount of water on his body. It's like drying yourself after going to the mikvah.
Exactly.
Even though there is a large amount of water on his body and his hands, and it will saturate the sheet and the cloth with which he dries his body or his hands, there is no concept of laundering, for he is not laundering the cloth, he is
dirtying it.
Is dirtying it, right? The towel is not a useful towel once it's wet.
Yeah.
For this reason, license was granted for a person going to perform a mitzvah to cross through a body of water while wearing his clothes. He has to cross through a river or lake on Shabbos to do a mitzvah, even though he's wearing his clothing and they will get wet. It is not said that saturating his clothes is considered as laundering them, for in this case as well, he is soiling his clothes when he enters the water while he's wearing them. This is not the ordinary manner in which people clean garments at all. It's the opposite. With regard to drying one's hands, there are authorities who are stringent and require that there not be a large amount of water in one's hand when drying them with a towel. Instead, one should dry his hand forcefully against each other to remove water from them to whatever extent he can before wiping them with a cloth. It is desirable to give weight to their words with regard to this matter, since doing so does not involve any loss. Nevertheless, the custom is to be lenient. Indeed, so meaning you wash your hands on Shabbos, you can dry them right away. You don't have to remove all the water from your hands before drying your hands with a towel. But obviously, there's nothing to lose if you do it that way, that you first try to remove some of the water from your hand before you drying them. Indeed, fundamentally, the halacha follows this view. For this reason, it is permitted to dry one's hands with a cloth on which a young child urinated in order to nullify the presence of the urine with the water it will come into contact with as a result of drying one's hands. As explained in section 77, this is not an act of laundering, because one is soiling the cloth by drying his hands on it. This is not the ordinary manner in which people clean garments. One may not, however, ritually wash his hands over the urine absorbed in the cloth to nullify its presence. The rationale is that although the water that flows down from his hands is considered as drainage water, pouring it over the cloth is not considered as soiling it, since the water is clear and fit to launder a cloth. Saturating the cloth with this water is considered as laundering it, according to the latter opinion mentioned above. According to that view, saturating a cloth is considered as laundering it. Even if there is no dirt or filth on the cloth. If there is excrement or another filthy substance on the cloth, it is forbidden to remove the filth, even by drying one's hand on the cloth. Even though one is soiling the cloth, as it were, he is removing even greater filth with regard to urine. By contrast, one is not removing it from the garment by drying one's hands on it. One is merely nullifying and purifying the garment from its presence in order that he will be able to pray. As an initial preference, it is desirable to be careful not to place a young child on one's lap on Shabbos unless he is placed on a pillow. It says in 98, this restriction is a precaution lest the child urinate and soil one's garments, according to Hilchis HaShabbos 119. To a large extent, the disposable diapers used today prevent the possibility of that taking place.
Boy, he's up to date.
Yeah.
Whoever did this.
Buch and Tiv.
So